Welcome to another AP Human Geography topic walkthrough, brought to you by Mr. Michael, Social Studies teacher. This video is here to help you fill out your lecture notes, understand the big ideas, and maybe even laugh once or twice. So grab your notes and let's get started.
Okay, pause. Imagine humans for thousands of years just wandering around like it's a never-ending survival game. And then suddenly, someone says, wait, what if we just stayed in one place and built a city? Boom. Civilization just unlocked a new level. Welcome to Topic 6.1, the origins and influences of urbanization. In this unit, we're figuring out why cities even exist, why some places blow up into massive urban hubs, and why others stay small rural towns. And trust me, humans did not just randomly pick places to build cities. Geography had receipts. So in this lesson, we're going to break down the real reasons cities grow. Things like site, situation, transportation, migration, economics, and government decisions. Basically, cities didn't just happen. They were built because certain locations had the ultimate geography buff. And next, we're about to unpack exactly what you're expected to master for this topic. Everything in this topic is basically trying to answer one chaotic question. Why do cities pop off while other places stay small towns? Like seriously, humans didn't just wake up one day and say, you know what would be fun? Traffic. Geographers look at the processes that push people towards city life. As populations grow and economies change, more and more people start moving into urban areas. That shift towards city living is called urbanization. And when those cities start spreading outward into surrounding residential areas, boom, that's suburbanization. But here's the thing. Cities don't grow randomly like NPC villages in Minecraft. There are actual forces behind it. Stuff like geography, transportation, communication networks, migration, economic opportunities, and government decisions all start stacking together like a city-building simulator. Basically, cities didn't just appear. They were built because certain places had the right advantages. And the very first advantage we need to understand is something geographers are absolutely obsessed with: location. Time to unlock the geography DLC that decides where cities spawn. Look at this chart. Geographers are obsessed with two words: site and situation. Same energy, totally different meaning. Site is the physical characteristics of a place: climate, landforms, water supply, fertile soil. If a location had fresh water, decent weather, and good farmland, early settlers were like, yep, this is the move. That's why so many early settlements formed near rivers and fertile valleys. Cincinnati is the perfect example. It sits on the north bank of the Ohio River in a valley with a temperate climate and fertile soil. Solid natural starter pack. Now situation. Situation is about connections and relative location, how a place links to trade routes and transportation networks. Because Cincinnati sat along the Ohio River, it became a major river port after 1811. Steamboats moved goods constantly, industries grew fast, and it earned the nickname Porkopolis. Cheat code. Site helps a city start. Situation helps it grow. Transportation didn't just help cities grow. It basically remixed how cities are built. Cities always need three things moving: raw materials to factories, finished goods to markets, and workers to jobs. If that movement slows down, the whole urban economy starts lagging like dial-up. That's why transportation networks, waterways, railroads, highways are such a big deal. Before the mid-1800s, cities were river stands. If you had a navigable river or port, you had a huge advantage because boats could move goods cheaply and efficiently. That's why many early North American cities formed along rivers and coastlines. Then railroads showed up and changed the game. Rail lines connected raw materials, factories, and markets across huge distances, giving rail-connected cities major economic advantages. Here's the key geography idea. Advances in transportation technology changed the spatial organization of cities. As transportation improves, people and businesses move farther from the original city center. That leads to suburbs, urban sprawl, and decentralization. When transportation levels up, cities don't just grow, they rearrange themselves. And streetcars, cars, and highways are about to prove it. Streetcars, cars, highways. This diagram is basically the transportation plot twist of urban history. When streetcars ran the show, cities stayed compact. You had to live near the line to reach jobs and shops, or your commute was tragic. Being close to downtown was a certified W. Then cars showed up and said, "We're not staying cramped." Suddenly, people could live farther away and still reach work. Suburbs started multiplying, bringing bigger houses and quieter streets. Cities began spreading outward. Then highways unlocked full decentralization. Businesses moved from downtown to cheaper land outside the core. Offices, malls, and jobs followed. Some areas grew fast. Others declined depending on access. Now look at the bottom. Communication tech evolves too. Landlines improved coordination. Then cell phones and the internet connected cities globally. With modern networks, collaboration is instant. Transportation plus communication shape where people live, where businesses locate, and how cities expand. Accessibility is the real driver of urban growth, and this whole story actually begins way earlier in American urban development. Peep this map for a second, because this is where urban growth stops feeling random and starts looking organized. A geographer named John Borchert created Borchert's Epics of American Urbanization. His big idea? Cities didn't just grow whenever they felt like it. Each major wave of urban growth was powered by new transportation technology. New tech dropped. Cities rearranged themselves. The first stage is the sail wagon epoch, about 1790 to 1830, when ships and horse-drawn wagons ran the show. Look at the map. Early cities cluster along the Atlantic coast. That's not coincidence. Port cities like Boston, New York, and Philadelphia thrived because international trade flowed through them. Coastal access meant instant economic advantage. Now check the rivers stretching inland. Cities developed along rivers like the Hudson, Ohio, and Mississippi because those rivers were the highways before highways. If you had river access, trade was easier and cheaper. If you didn't, growth was slower. During the sail wagon epoch, accessibility along coasts and rivers was the blueprint. But another transportation upgrade was about to flip the map again. Transportation really said, "You thought that was it? Watch this." After the sail wagon epoch came the Iron Horse epoch from 1830 to 1870. Iron Horse is just the steam locomotive. But railroads were a massive upgrade. Cities weren't stuck hugging coasts and rivers anymore. Trains moved raw materials, factory goods, and workers faster and cheaper. If your city tapped into the rail network, you unlocked serious economic momentum. Railroads linked cities to coal, timber, and farmland, creating stronger regional trade systems. Then came the steel rail epoch, 1870 to 1920, when railroads went full expansion mode. Transcontinental lines connected the East Coast to the Pacific, turning rail access into a national growth advantage. Industrial cities in the Northeast and Midwest grew rapidly. Chicago became the ultimate rail hub because Eastern and Western lines met there, giving it huge situational advantages for trade and industry. Meanwhile, some older river-based cities declined. The big idea? Cities at major transportation crossroads gained long-term economic power, and another transportation shift was about to flip the map again. Railroads were not playing around during this era. We're in the steel rail epoch about 1870 to 1920, and rail lines basically went full expansion mode. This is when transcontinental railroads connected the East Coast to the West Coast. Before that, crossing the country was slow and expensive. Once rail stretched coast to coast, goods, workers, and raw materials could move way faster. cities connected to those rail networks gained serious economic momentum. Industrial centers in the Northeast and Midwest kept growing because factories, labor, and resources all flowed along rail routes. Rail access became a major growth advantage. Then there's Chicago. It sat where Eastern and Western rail lines met, turning it into a powerful transportation hub. Grain, meat, steel, manufactured goods, so much moved through Chicago because of its situational advantage. Meanwhile, some older river-based cities like New Orleans lost influence as rail-centered cities gained control of trade. The big idea is situational factors. Cities at major transportation crossroads gained long-term economic power, and another transportation shift was about to change everything again. Transportation really said, "We're not done evolving." After the steel rail epic comes the auto-air amenity epic, starting around 1920 and still going today. Once automobiles became common and governments built massive highway systems, the whole urban system shifted. Trains were no longer the main character. Cars gave people serious freedom energy. You didn't have to live near rail lines anymore. You could drive. That's when suburbs started multiplying fast. Cities stopped growing only upward and dense and started spreading outward. Highways made commuting easier, which fueled suburbanization and decentralization of jobs and businesses. Then air travel leveled it up again. Airports became major transportation hubs connecting cities globally. If your city had a major airport, that was a huge economic advantage. Regionally, Great Lakes cities like Detroit grew with the automobile industry, while Sunbelt cities such as Houston, Phoenix, Dallas, and Atlanta boomed from migration and new opportunities. Transportation didn't just shape trade, it reshaped where people live. And then communication technology stepped in and changed the game again. Imagine the global economy as one giant group chat, except it's not memes, it's prices, trade deals, and supply updates flying non-stop. Back in the day, communication followed trade routes. Wherever goods moved, information rode shotgun. Cities on major trade routes became info hubs. If you wanted updates on supply, demand, or market shifts, you had to be there. That's where merchants linked up and made power moves. Then technology hit upgrade mode. Telephones let businesses coordinate instantly instead of waiting on letters, which sped up economic activity fast. Then computers and the internet dropped and flipped the whole system. Communication costs fell, information moved globally in seconds, and supply chains became way more efficient. Companies could manage production across countries like it was light work. Because of that, strong communication infrastructure became a serious advantage. Businesses clustered in cities with powerful telecom networks and skilled workers. That's why places like Silicon Valley turned into innovation magnets. Communication networks don't just move information, they shape where companies locate and which cities level up. And just when info flow is running the show, migration and population growth start pulling millions toward urban areas. Take a look at this shift. For most of human history, people lived in rural areas. Farming villages were the default setting. But once cities started offering factory jobs, education, healthcare, and services, rural to urban migration became the main storyline of the global economy. If you're in a rural village and a nearby city has wages, universities, and hospitals, that opportunity just hits different. So people move. That movement from rural areas to cities is one of the biggest drivers of urbanization. As more people arrive, urban areas grow rapidly. That growth can boost economic development, but if infrastructure can't keep up, housing, sanitation, transportation, things get messy fast. The data backs it up. Around 1960, most of the world still lived in rural areas. By 2017, about 55% of the global population lived in cities. By 2050, projections show about 68% will be urban. Cities keep expanding as people search for opportunity. But when growth outpaces planning, informal settlements like favelas, squatter settlements, and slums start to appear. Now this is where urban growth starts getting extra. When millions move from rural areas into cities chasing jobs, education, and services, urbanization can move way faster than infrastructure. Housing, sanitation, transportation, all of it has to keep up. And when it doesn't, that's when favelas, squatter settlements, and slums start forming. These neighborhoods develop because affordable housing in the formal city just isn't available. People still need a place to live, so they build wherever land is open. And before anyone starts throwing shade, remember, these communities exist because rapid urbanization outpaced government planning and housing markets. According to urban geography standards, a slum household typically lacks one or more basic conditions: durable housing, enough living space, access to safe drinking water, or proper sanitation. So, while downtown might look all shiny and bougie with high-rises and luxury apartments, just a short distance away, entire communities may struggle for basic services. Urbanization can create opportunity, but when growth moves too fast, inequality can clap back hard. A powerful example is Resina in Rio de Janeiro, where dense, informal housing developed on steep hillsides beside wealthy coastal districts. Take a look at this image for a second. Down by the beach, you see luxury high-rises, famous coastline views, polished buildings. The whole skyline is giving wealth energy. But right behind it, climbing up the hillside, you see dense housing stacked almost on top of each other. That area is Resina, the largest favela in Brazil. A favela is an informal settlement, meaning it developed without formal government planning. These communities form when rapid urbanization and rural-to-urban migration push city growth faster than affordable housing can keep up. People move to cities for jobs, education, and services. But when the formal housing market falls short, they build wherever land is available: hillsides, flood-prone areas, unused land near the urban core. Over time, these settlements become extremely dense. In Resina alone, about 70,000 people live on steep slopes. Many slum households lack durable housing, adequate living space, safe drinking water, or proper sanitation. Urbanization creates opportunity, but when growth outpaces infrastructure, inequality shows up fast. And the next factor shaping cities? Economic development and the types of industries they attract. Geographers figured this out fast. Cities don't grow randomly. They grow because of economic function. Money, jobs, industries, that's the real plot. A city's economic specialization can literally decide how big it gets. Think of cities like picking a career path. Some become government centers. Some go all in on manufacturing. Some build their whole vibe around tourism. And others become financial hubs. Once a city finds its lane, businesses move in, workers follow the jobs, and population growth starts going wild. Take Detroit in the early 1900s. The automobile industry there was booming, factories were hiring non-stop, and the city basically became the face of car manufacturing. Houston built its identity around the oil and energy sector, attracting engineers and related industries. Tourism cities like Las Vegas, Cancun, Phuket, and Bali grew by specializing in entertainment and visitors. Then you have financial centers like New York's Wall Street or Singapore, pulling in global banks and investment firms. The pattern is simple. Economic specialization attracts jobs, jobs attract people, and cities expand. But industries aren't the only thing shaping growth. Governments also step in with policies designed to attract businesses and drive development. Cities don't just grow naturally. Sometimes governments are absolutely pulling the strings behind the scenes. If a country wants more jobs, businesses, and economic growth, it rolls out policies to attract investment and secure the W. One major strategy is tax incentives. Governments basically tell companies, build your factory or office here, and we'll lower your taxes. For businesses chasing profit, that offer hits different. Another move is creating industrial parks, designated zones built for manufacturing and production. Countries like Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia have developed massive industrial zones that attract global companies and plug into international supply chains. Governments also invest in transportation infrastructure, highways, ports, rail systems, and airports, because smooth transportation lowers costs and boosts trade. That's a huge competitive advantage. But companies also care about quality of life. Good schools, housing, safety, and services make it easier to attract skilled workers. When strong infrastructure and smart policy combine, businesses cluster, workers follow, and urban growth starts popping off. And sometimes governments take it even further. They build entirely new capital cities from scratch, which is where forward capitals enter the storyline. Picture a government looking at its capital city and thinking, "This situation is getting kind of sus. Traffic is wild, population keeps climbing, infrastructure is struggling. Big yikes energy." Instead of fixing the chaos, some governments choose a bold move. Build a completely new capital somewhere else. That's called a forward capital. It's basically urban planning on hard reset mode. You get to design wide roads, modern infrastructure, organized government districts, and space for future growth. No overcrowded historic layout, just a fresh start. Brazil did this in the 1950s. Rio de Janeiro was crowded and coastal, so the government built Brasilia from scratch in the interior. It was carefully planned with separated zones for government, housing, and business, and designed around automobile transportation. Malaysia built Putrajaya to shift administrative functions from Kuala Lumpur, and Indonesia is constructing Nusantara to replace Jakarta, which faces flooding and congestion. Forward capitals show how governments can actively shape urban development instead of just reacting to it. And once you zoom out, you start seeing how transportation, migration, economic specialization, and policy all connect in shaping urbanization. This whole topic is basically an urban glow-up montage, but with migration data and infrastructure stress. Cities don't just pop up randomly. There are real forces behind the chaos. First, population growth and rural to urban migration. When people move into cities chasing jobs, education, and services, urbanization accelerates fast. If housing and infrastructure can't keep up, that's when slums, favelas, and informal settlements start forming. It's giving, "We expanded too fast." Then there's economic specialization. Some cities dominate manufacturing, some focus on tourism, some become financial hubs, others serve as government centers. Once a city locks in its economic function, businesses cluster, workers follow, and population growth levels up. Governments also play a major role. Through tax incentives, industrial parks, transportation investment, and quality of life improvements, they actively shape urban development. And when a capital becomes overcrowded or inefficient, countries sometimes build a forward capital like Brasilia or Putrajaya to reset the system. Urbanization is shaped by migration, economic development, and policy decisions working together. When those forces align, cities transform fast. And now it's your turn to prove you actually locked in. Cities grow because of urbanization, and that growth is influenced by things like migration, economic development, government policies, and even the creation of forward capitals. But not every city grows the same way, and not every government move is a straight W for everyone involved. So here's the real question. When a government builds a forward capital to reduce urbanization problems like overcrowding, housing shortages, and infrastructure stress, does that actually solve those problems long-term, or does it just shift them somewhere else? Think about how migration patterns, economic opportunities, and government planning all connect, and use specific examples from real cities to support your thinking. Because this decision could either be big brain or a total weird flex that doesn't solve anything. Drop your answer in the comments, and don't forget to add your name for that bonus point.